Well, good evening, everyone. My name is Megan Woodward, and I serve as a coordinator in the Center for Student Engagement. And tonight we have Margie Kendall with us here from Serenity, Knoll. We're going to do some cooking, spicing up your ramen noodles. So I'll give Margie the floor and let her introduce herself and what we're going to be doing tonight.
All right. Thank you so much, Megan. My name is Margie Kendall, and like Megan said, I started a cooking school here in East Tennessee, in Jonesboro, Tennessee, actually, about 3 years ago now. I have always loved to cook. I've always loved to teach people how to cook, and so it was always a passion of mine to teach others. And so we started a cooking school, and it was a pretty wild success. So now Serenity Knoll does classes almost every single day of the week. Even now, we've reduced down to like smaller size classes with COVID. We had to cancel them for a long time, but we're back to doing smaller size classes and still doing several. And I also then, I recently actually had a baby this year, so I'm now actually mostly home, and I teach a lot of Zoom classes. So through Serenity Knoll, and also I run a food blog called Margie Foodie, and so I run classes through that as well. So I do a wide range of different types of styles of cooking. I try to do a lot of ethnic cuisine. I am a big traveler, and so I've always traveled with the intention of trying cuisine from all over the world, and so I like to bring that into what I cook and teach and blog about. And so I always love to just explore fun flavors and bring some, culture here to East Tennessee as much as I can. It's very fun. So with that said, tonight we're actually going to be doing a class called Spice Up Your Ramen Noodles. So we're going to be taking the boring 20 cents, 10 cents. I don't even know how much ramen noodles cost these days. They're pretty cheap. We're going to be turning these into better meals. So they are, they're pretty plain. They're salty. There's a lot you can do to spice them up. So we're going to do 3 different dishes with them today. And we're going to go ahead and I'll talk about all 3 of them, before we get started. But the first thing I'd like to do is just kind of go over all of our equipment and make sure we have everything we need in a class. So if anyone wants to cook along with this video, hopefully it'll be perfect for you to do that. So if you're going to cook along, you always want to have all your equipment, everything ready. It's called mise en place. It's French for everything in its place. It makes cooking so much better. I always try to pepper in little pieces of advice and tidbits for people when they cook, when I teach, just to make everyday cooking a lot easier for you. It doesn't matter if you're an experienced cook, a basic cook, or not even a cook at all. Anytime you're in the kitchen, you always want to have everything organized and ready to go, so it's not stressful. It's one of the number one things I hear people tell me, that cooking is stressful, and it shouldn't be stressful for you. So it should be fun and enjoyable. So what we're going to need today, I'm going to be for Zoom too. I'm going to be kind of positioning my camera. It's on a computer, so it's stationary. But I'm going to be moving it around. I'll point down towards my cutting board so you can see when I'm doing some chopping and things. My stovetop, I'm teaching from my own kitchen right now. My stovetop is back there, so I'll be actually moving the computer back over there a few times to show you what's going on over there. Often I'll just also talk about what's happening, so you know what your food should be looking like when you guys are making these dishes. The other thing we're going to need is a couple small bowls like this, like a cereal bowl, nothing fancy, just like a small prep cereal bowl is good. These are my cereal bowls. That's what I use. We're going to need a larger mixing bowl like this. Basically the largest mixing bowl you have in your kitchen today. It can be a big pot. If you don't have a large mixing bowl, you can get really creative. Again, you don't have to have fancy equipment for any of these. For most of my dishes, I don't want you to have fancy equipment for. And so again, with our cutting board, you want to have a knife. One tidbit I'd like to tell everyone too is when you guys are doing chopping, always put like some sort of towel or something underneath your cutting board. That way when you're actually cutting, your cutting board actually stays in place. If I try to wiggle it, it's really hard. If this wasn't here, it would kind of, shift all over my countertop, which makes chopping hard, and it's also not safe. So you always want to be doing safe practice when you're using knife and knife skills. And so the ingredients list too, we have all of our ramen. I've got all of my different ingredients set ready to go right here. You can see, just so it's ready whenever we're ready. So again, before we do each dish, I'll talk about what exactly you need and measurements for it, but I always like to have it out and accessible. We're using an egg today, so you can leave that in your refrigerator for a little bit longer if you're more comfortable. Although eggs are actually, they can stay outside of your refrigerator for up to about 2 or 3 hours before you use them, before they're not. Before you might be questioning whether they're good or not. So it's okay if you want to get it out. But again, comfort level, if you feel more comfortable keeping it cold, you can keep that in the fridge. You won't use that for a little while. We're also gonna need some basics today, like some salt. I keep kosher salt in a little jar like this. I just kind of do a lot of pinch and just taste tests when it comes to salting my food. So that's one tip I like to teach in in-person cooking classes and Zoom. I like using kosher salt. I think it works better. I think it seasons your food better. And it's easy just to kind of have a little pinch pot here to quickly season your food. So that's one thing I like to have. I also need some olive oil today, or canola oil works fine. With the dishes we're doing with the ramen, you could use like some sesame oil or peanut oil or other Asian flavors if you want to spice it up a little bit. I'll talk about where you can apply those if you want to. Those are really good, and they really, really kind of elevate your dishes that you're making. Measuring equipment today, we have a tablespoon, not a teaspoon. We have a tablespoon and about a quarter cup. So we'll use today for our measuring. We aren't doing tons of exact measuring today, which makes cooking a lot easier. I don't love to do a lot of measuring. I like to do a lot of pinches and guesses and little splashes and dashes, but we're gonna measure for a little bit today, so we will use these. So not tons of equipment, that's what we've got. All right, and then as far as your cooktop equipment, I'm gonna show you the pans that I've got. You really only need 2 pots today. So again, they can be like 2 pots about this size. I'm using a pot this size and a pot this size. You want at least one bigger one, but the one smaller one will work well too. So we're gonna be doing our main, we're actually doing our main like classic ramen in this big one. We'll be using this one for a couple of the dishes actually. So you wanna have 2 pots available to you. The last piece of equipment we want is we're gonna have a colander, like a strainer for some noodles, because one of our packs of ramen, we're actually just gonna be boiling them and then straining them. So you wanna have a colander, one like this, a metal one, anything you got just to drain noodles. If you don't have a colander, you can just kind of carefully strain all the water out from your noodles when you're done cooking. So we'll talk about that when it comes to that. So the 3 things we're gonna be cooking today is we're gonna be making a simple ramen salad. This one's the most simple to make, but I really like to make it because it shows you a really unique way to use your ramen noodles, and we're actually not even cooking them, which is kind of fun too. I love this salad. I think it's really filling, it's flavorful, pairs well with a lot of things. And the easiest thing, or the best thing, is it's just super, super easy. So I love making this simple ramen salad. So that's the thing we're gonna be doing first. And then we're gonna be kind of going between the other 2 dishes after we do the ramen salad. The ramen salad needs to sit in the refrigerator for quite some time. So if you're gonna be cooking along with me ever here, just know that you probably won't wanna eat this right away. Let it sit overnight, or at least for a couple hours. I'll probably sample it right at the end of class, so you can kind of just, sample along with me if you're cooking along too, so you can get a try of it. But again, this one tastes really good the next day. So I always like to make this one, let it sit in my fridge. It's good for leftovers for like 3 or 4 days, perfect for lunches. It'll pair with whatever I make for dinner tomorrow. So it's really, really, really simple. And there's a lot of fun other things you can add to this one. So we'll talk about that when we do that. But we're gonna get that one started in a little bit. But the other 2 dishes we're doing a Thai peanut noodle. So we're gonna be using these noodles and its pack to do like a Thai peanut, classic flavors, and have some soy sauce, a little bit of acidity with the lime juice flavor. You can use sriracha to spice it up a little bit, but a Thai peanut noodle. I'll also talk about some variations you can do to that dish if you want it to taste a little bit like pad thai. Pad thai is a very favorite of a lot of people. So again, I'll be also sending these recipes to Megan so she can just send you the instructions too. So, and in that I will include what you would need to just kind of change it up a little bit to make it taste a little more like pad thai, a little less peanutty. But this peanut one is simple. Again, it doesn't use very many ingredients. That's why I like to teach this one. And lastly, we're gonna do a classic tonkotsu ramen. So when you think of ramen noodles, and they're kind of trendy right now, you see the beautiful bowls with like eggs and greens and vegetables and things. We're gonna do an easy take on that. If you're gonna do a really authentic classic tonkotsu ramen, it actually is pretty extensive. You need a lot of time. You make your noodles from scratch. You gotta build flavors in a stock. So again, we don't have hours to do that right now. So we're gonna do a quicker version of that. This will be an easy way for you to elevate your ramen so you aren't just taking these plain old packs and making, you know, just boring ramen. So we're gonna add some pork to it. We're gonna add some veggies to it. And then I'm gonna show you actually how to do the perfect hard-boiled egg too. So when I've taught this class before, people have said that was the most helpful information from this class is how to do the perfect hard-boiled egg for it. So at the end of the hard-boiled egg lesson, when you open up your egg, it's gonna be that perfect kind of, you know, yolk that kind of looks kind of jammy and still, you know, it's cooked all the way through. But it's like mostly, you know, it's liquidy, so it will spill into your ramen almost like a little sauce. It's super good. So anyway, with that said, we're gonna go ahead and get started. And the first thing we're gonna do is we're gonna work on our salad. So for our salad, we're gonna need that big mixing bowl that we talked about earlier. So get out your big mixing bowl. I'm gonna point down here so you can see what I'm doing. For this one, you're going to be using 2 packs of ramen. And so for the ingredients list for this class, I said get 2 packs of chicken ramen, and that works really well. So I've got my 2 packs of chicken ramen here. You can really use any flavor of ramen. You don't have to use chicken. You could use pork. You could use the soy. This one's a good mild flavor, so it's a good starting point. You're going to be trying this dish. So to get started, the first thing we're going to do is we're just going to totally smash up both of these packets to get the ramen into smaller bits. So I'm going to go ahead and do that now. We'll take a little break. It's going to be super loud, so I'm not going to talk while I do that because you'll be able to hear what I'm doing. But use this time to really break it up. You can just use your hands. You can get the edge of a knife and kind of, you know, bang it out, but I think you can just go ahead and just crunch it up too. So I'm going to be crunching it up and I'm going to be dumping them here in the bowl. I'm going to save that flavor packet though. I'm not going to put that in yet. We are going to use that eventually, just not quite yet. All right, got it all crunched up. Saving my flavor packet. You'll see here, I've got my, you know, it's all kind of crunched up into little pieces. That's what I want. Kind of go through, if you see like bigger chunks like this, just kind of keep breaking those up. You can have some big chunks, like here's a chunk, that's fine, it's a little smaller, but some of these bigger ones, we're gonna chunk up. Break up a little more so it's not so chunky. So what's gonna happen with these noodles is we're not cooking them, is they're actually gonna be soaking in a dressing that we're gonna make next, and that will actually soften them up. So they aren't gonna be as crunchy as this. They'll be a little crunchy to have a little bit of texture on it, but that dressing we're gonna make is gonna soak into that and give it a ton of flavor. So I'm gonna do my other packet and then we'll make that dressing together. It's harder to break up for some reason. I'll open it and do it by hand. Save that flavor packet. Breaking up some of these bigger chunks by hand here. Put them across my table. All right. So before we make our dressing, the next thing that's going to go in this mixing bowl is our package of broccoli slaw from your ingredients list. So again, broccoli slaw is really good for this, but you could use like any sort of like 12-ounce pack of slaw. You can find some more, you know, ginger slaws. You can find some, you know, Southwest slaws. There's a bunch of different types you can use. This is just a classic one that's really good for that. You could also, you know, chop up carrots and broccoli and cabbage all on your own, but these little packs are affordable, cheap, and easy for the salad. So I would just use one of these. Open mine. There we go. I'm just gonna add it in with my ramen here. And mix it all up by hand. Here's where if you wanted to add some more things, you could. Again, I just wanted to keep it simple for just the purpose of this class, but if you're gonna make this on your own or you make it once and you think you wanted to add a little more, red onion is really good in this. Adding some like nuts, like sunflower seeds or even like peanuts or cashews would be really good. You can add some peas or some corn, more carrots or cabbage if you like that. But this is just, again, we're doing simple today. So I've got that all mixed down. Put this to the side and we're gonna make our dressing. So again, this dish is like, it's super easy. It just sits in the refrigerator once you make it. It's really good for like, again, it pairs well for just lunches. It's really filling, and it kind of seems like it might be strange, but I promise you it's pretty good. So for our dressing, for the ingredients list that you guys got, I said you need a 1/4 cup of apple cider vinegar. This is a really good vinegar for this. You want some sort of white vinegar or something more mild. You could use like white wine vinegar. You could use white vinegar if you wanted to. Apple cider is really good. It adds a little bit more of a kind of a punch to it. I wouldn't use something like red wine vinegar or like balsamic. It's gonna be a little bit too much competing flavors for this one. So apple cider is a good way to go, but if you've got some other like white wine vinegar or just a plain white vinegar, that works really well too. I'm gonna do a 1/4 cup of this and then a 1/4 cup of white sugar. So how do you make anything delicious? You add sugar to it. So we're gonna add a little bit of sugar to our dressing. A lot of dressings like this will have sugar in it. And then we're also gonna add our 2 flavor packets to our dressing. So we're gonna get those mixed all together. And I'll probably do just a dash of olive oil. I don't need a ton of it, probably about a tablespoon total. That's gonna help this dressing latch on to our broccoli slaw and the ramen we just crushed. It's gonna just help it soak in the flavor. We don't really want it to be super oily. Again, this is kind of like a light, fresh salad that we're making, so we don't wanna over oil it, but just a little bit will be good. So when I made this last week, you know what we did, 1/4 cup of vinegar, a 1/4 cup of sugar. I kind of, when I tried it later on, I kind of wanted a little more dressing. So I'm actually going to upgrade to a 1/3 cup. So if you have enough to do a third and a third, go ahead and do that today. I like a lot of dressing, so maybe if you want to try it the first time without that much, that's totally fine. Again, I know that I really love vinegary flavors and vinaigrettes, but just whenever you're doing this on your own, you always want to have equal parts vinegar and sugar. Vinegar and sugar need to be equal parts. The olive oil, again, is just like a dab. Just make sure that the vinegar and oil is at equal parts. So I'm going to measure out my sugar first, and then I'll do my oil or my vinegar. If you do the vinegar first and then the sugar, you might get sugar that will stick all the way to your thing. We've probably all been there before. I'm there all. I cook for a living and I still make a lot of mistakes like that. So I'm doing 1/3 cup of sugar. Measure my 1/3 cup of apple cider vinegar. Then I'm gonna get like a fork out or a whisk if you have one and kind of whisk it all together to get that sugar to melt into the vinegar. If you don't have, if you're having a really hard time getting your sugar to dissolve in your vinegar, you can also put it in the microwave for about 10 seconds. That will help. Adding my flavor packets first. Nice that you have these little packets here because it will save you from having to use a bunch of random seasonings. You know, especially if you're a student, you might not have, you know, a huge spice cabinet. This will make it super easy for you to add easy flavor. You don't need to add any extra salt to this salad because these packets already have a lot of salt in them. All right, that's gone. You get a fork out or a whisk if you've got one, and just kind of whisk it together to make my dressing. You don't need to whisk it for too long, just enough to get that sugar to dissolve into the vinegar. Olive oil now, and just add a tablespoon of that. You guys might have seen I'm in my kitchen barefoot right now. It's pointed downwards. Usually I don't show my feet in the Zoom camera, but casual Tuesday here. All right, so I just did a tablespoon of olive oil. You can just like eyeball that too and just do a little drizzle. It up. All right, and that's mostly mixed. You want to mix it just enough so all the oil kind of gets mixed in there, and then pretty immediately dump it in your big mixing bowl with everything else. Then you want to get a spoon, or even better, a rubber spatula if you have one in your kitchen. I'm just going to use a spoon. And you're going go ahead and start to mix it. You want to mix it for a good minute or so and make sure that that dressing gets touched, touches every part of the salad that we have here. So I'm starting to mix for a few minutes here, or a minute here. This is all we're going to add to this tonight. It's super easy. We're going to put it in the refrigerator to soak. And I'll take it out and we can taste test it, at the end of this video. So if you're cooking along with me, you can taste test it too. You'll get an idea of what the flavor is. It's nice and light, super fresh, really easy. It's a good potluck dish if you need to bring like a salad for a potluck and you don't just want to bring a boring salad. This is not a boring salad. Again, you can add some nuts to this. I usually like to add a little red onion if I have any. If you want to make it spicy, you can add a little sriracha to your dressing too. Nothing wrong with that. Add sriracha to anything we're making tonight if you like sriracha like I do. All right. Just kind of check all your little pieces of ramen, make sure they're sort of glistening. They're coated on the vinegar's coated on them. That's good. So what we're gonna do now is I'm gonna position this up. We're gonna put this in the refrigerator and just let it soak for a little bit, okay? And probably like halfway through class, we'll just kind of take it back out, stir it up a little bit, because sometimes the vinegar can settle or your dressing will settle on the bottom. You wanna make sure all that vinegar, all that dressing soaks into our salad that we've made here. And this might seem the one that's strangest to you because we just have like chunks of uncooked ramen in here, but I promise you, you're gonna like it. I did this class with some folks last week and they all said that they were actually really surprised at how much they liked the salad because it seemed super strange in the beginning. I'm gonna go put this in the fridge. We're gonna come back and start our other dishes. All right, so we're gonna actually get our classic pork ramen going. So again, this is a tonkotsu ramen. So ramen actually is a Japanese dish. It actually originated in a Chinatown within Japan. So, but again, you can find ramen all over Asian countries. There's a lot in Korea and South Korea, especially all over China. It's very, very good, very easy. And it's classically made with pork. And so that's why we're gonna use just easy, cheap diced pork today. You can use nicer sliced pork, brisket, things like that, or brisket's beef. You can use like beef, you could use chicken if you wanted to. We're just gonna use pork today though. The first thing we're gonna do is we're gonna work on building our stock. So we wanna build, some flavor, so we aren't just like boiling this in water, putting in our flavor packet, calling it good. We're gonna actually make our own stock using the pork flavor. We're gonna add in some mushrooms, some greens, some ginger and garlic. That way we'll build our own flavors. We'll save that spice packet from the ramen just in case you want to use it to spice it up a little. Sometimes I'll add like half a pack if I think it needs a little more salt. But we're gonna go ahead and get that started. So to get that started, the first thing we're gonna do is brown our pork. Let me show you the pork I'm using. Just kind of chunks of diced pork. So it's about a handful or so, it's roughly a half pound, a little bit less, a little bit more is fine. Again, this is one thing, it doesn't need to be super, super exact. We're gonna just brown it in the big pot. So how I mentioned at the beginning, we have two pots. There's one that's a little bit bigger. We're gonna brown it in there, which means we're gonna turn up the heat on our pot to be a little bit higher, probably medium high heat. With about maybe a tablespoon of olive oil. So the first thing we're gonna do is get the tablespoon of olive oil heating up. In order to brown meat like this, you don't wanna add the meat in until your pot is hot. If you probably added, like chicken and pork and things to a pot when it wasn't hot enough, it loses all of its water and becomes kind of like watery. You get like this weird like meat liquid in there that no one really likes. So the best way to avoid that is to put your meat in there when the pot is hot enough. So I'm gonna go over there right now and turn up my stove to about a medium high. I'm just gonna eyeball about a tablespoon of olive oil in there to heat that up. All right, got that in there. And the other, so we're gonna get our pork browned in there. So we're gonna wait about a minute, let the olive oil heat up. Then we're gonna add our pork. We're gonna give it a good old stir so it doesn't get stuck to the bottom at all. And then once our pork is all the way like browned on the outside, it might not be cooked on the inside, and that's okay. We just want it to be browned on the outside. We're actually gonna put our pork back in this same bowl. I know that we use, raw pork in this bowl. We don't usually want to do that, but we're actually going to be adding the pork back into our stock shortly after. So it's going to keep getting cooked quite a bit. So it's okay that you put it back in this bowl. Again, I like to cut down on as many dishes as possible. So I always tell you when you can save something and reuse it. So we're going to brown this in there. So I'm going to go add it in. I'm going to use a spoon. I'll use the same spoon I've just used. To add it to the pot, and I'm going to stir it a little bit and let it brown. So to let something brown, what's different, with like a sear and like a saute, those are probably some cooking terms you've heard. Letting something sear is when you're going to let it get kind of a crusty brown on there. Sauteing is just kind of stirring it off and to let it get cooked all the way throughout. So we're going to go for more of a sear here. We're not really searing it, we just want it to brown more. So we just want to stir it like every minute or so, just so we get that nice kind of dark texture on the outside of this. The only reason why we do that, there's nothing wrong with like sauteing your pork for this, but the way we do this is I just like to have more texture on my meat, especially when we're having it in like a pasta or soup, something that's kind of mushy by nature. It's nice to just add texture wherever we can. Another way we can add texture with heat is by adding some salt. So what I'm going to do now, I'm just going to salt my pork a little bit. Just like a pinch of salt. You can just do a couple cranks of it, however you're doing it. I'm going to stir my pork there, put a little salt on there. That'll help give it a little bit of flavor and a little bit of texture. Just salt. You can add some pepper if you wanted to. Pepper is not really classically used in a lot of Asian cuisine, so I'm not going to use it, but you can if you want. Again, this is what you guys like to eat. I'm going to go add this to my pot now, and again, I'll show it to you once it is brown so you can see what it looks like. Keep an eye on your pork. You don't want it to burn. It's starting to burn. If you're getting that, like, you can smell that burning, turn down your temperature a little bit. But if you're going over there and it's not really getting any texture or any brown on it, turn your heat up a little bit. So I'm going to go add mine. One indication to know if your pot is hot enough too is when you add your meat to it, you should hear a sizzle right away. If you don't hear a sizzle, it's not ready. Let it heat up a little bit longer. So I'm going to go over, I'm going to dab one of these in there. I'll bring the computer over there actually so you can listen for the sizzle too. And I'll tell you what to do if you don't hear it. A tour of my kitchen. All right, so I'm going to be adding to the pot here. I don't know if you'll be able to hear the sizzle from over there. I'm going to add just one piece of pork. Oh, I hear it. Okay, I guess nodding. She can hear it too. Good. That means I'm going to add it all now. Get like a wooden spoon or a larger spoon. Stir it up. I'm going to go back over here because you can't really hear me really well over that sizzle. So now our pork is browning, and now it's where I told you just want to stir it. Let it sit for a little bit. I'm going to go check on it every once in a while and give it a little stir so it browns on all sides. But this process should take maybe 3 minutes or so, and then we're going to add it back to that bowl. And then we're going to work on building some of our other flavors, like our garlic. We're going to get our garlic ready. We're going to add our mushrooms in, and we'll start to get our stock going from there. So while that is going, we're actually going to chop our garlic up. So in our description for what you needed for this class, you need a little nub of ginger and you need a clove of garlic. If you're a big garlic fan like me, you can use multiple cloves if you want to. You can also, for ginger, I actually was going to be using ground ginger today, only because I couldn't find a nub of ginger at the store. And so right now during pandemic times, I'm always telling people to use what you can find or what you have, and don't go shopping at like 4 different stores trying to get a nub of ginger, for example, and there's a lot of other things you can use. So if you can't find what you want, always try to be creative. This ground ginger is perfect for that. You can buy little jars of pre-minced ginger or little tubes of pre-minced ginger. That works really well as well. And I'll tell you what amounts to use for all 3 of those, depending on what you can find today. So for the garlic, I'm going to show you how to chop a clove of garlic. First, I'm going to go stir my pork. I'll be back to do that. My pork is looking nice and brown, so hopefully yours is too. And again, if you're not getting any brown, turn up your temperature a little bit. And if it's kind of looks like it's burning, go ahead and turn it down. So I'm going to just harvest 1 clove. Again, this is a bulb of garlic right here. This is a bulb, and then these little pieces are cloves. I always like to explain that because, it might seem simple for someone who cooks a lot, but, I taught a cooking class once where I told someone to mince up 3 cloves of garlic, and I came back over to him and he had been mincing up 3 whole bulbs of garlic. So I just like to emphasize that, what the differences are. I love garlic, but that would have been a whole lot of garlic. So what I'm going to do now is on the cloves, I'm going to chop off the edge of each one. So I'm going to chop off the tip here and this little nub right here. That way it's easier to peel. You want to peel all of these little layers off this garlic until it's nice and smooth. If you get any of this little paper film in there, it's not going to taste very good. You can eat it. There's nothing wrong with it. It's just not, texture's not very nice. No one really likes it. Peel. Some garlic's easier to peel than others. Got a little clove here. I'll show you another way to peel it, just because I'm going to use 2 cloves because I love garlic. I'll show you the way that everyone likes to see, because this is what the chefs do on TV. They always put their knife down and then just give it a little bit of a tap with the palm of their hand. Don't crush it too hard, so you'll crush all your garlic, and it's really hard to mince. And then it's pretty easy to peel at that point too. It kind of comes right off. Notice how I didn't slam it super hard. It's not good for your hands or the garlic. Right. Chop off the little nub. You don't want that. And once you have your little garlics here, I like to hold them close together and just do little kind of cuts. I kind of rock my knife through and get little slits in all one direction first, instead of just going to town on it. That way they're all small and little bits. And then for garlic too, you can kind of keep going through, just kind of slide through it like this. I'll go to this side so you can see how I'm doing that. And you're going to keep doing this until you get small little bits of garlic. I'm just kind of I'm picking it up, sliding it through. Keep your hands, far enough away, but you can help guide the garlic to be in the path of your knife too. Another way, if you're not really comfortable putting your hand that close to your knife, which I don't want you to be uncomfortable, is just to kind of put your hand on top of it like this and kind of windmill and a pivot around your garlic. Every once in a while, it will have to stop and kind of clear your blade because it will stick to your blade. Regather it with the edge of your knife. Just kind of push your way through. You can leave pieces pretty big for this. I'm going to go stir my pork. I'll be right back.
And Margie, quick question. What is your preferred oil to use when you're cooking meat, like you're doing with the pork?
Great question. I use olive oil. Olive oil or canola oil works better too. I like the flavor of olive oil better, and I always keep a big jar of it. This is a Costco size thing of olive oil. This one's like, I think around $10, which is pretty cheap for this much olive oil. If you were to pay $10 for olive oil at like Kroger or something, you'd get like one that was like this size. So you could see the difference. So it definitely is good. Canola oil works better, works just fine too. And it's a little bit more affordable. So I always tell people that if you don't have olive oil, use canola oil as well. Something like vegetable oil is way too oily for this. So don't use vegetable oil. Stick to canola or olive oil, or butter would work too. You could probably use like a tablespoon of butter too.
And can you explain the difference between the olive oil types too? Because I know that can be a little bit confusing.
Sure. Yeah. So really, different types of olive oil. Really, the classic one is extra virgin olive oil. The differences in them is just going to be on flavor and like viscosity. So like you'll find like light olive oils, you'll find extra virgin. I'm trying to think of the other types that you'll really see. Those are the class. You'll see like extra virgin. Really, it's gonna all come down to flavor for the most part. Sometimes the ones that are like the lighter olive oils, they actually have a lower burning point, like similar to butter. So you just want to be careful with, if you're used to using one type and you get like a light olive oil, the burning point could be better or could be lower. So therefore, you just want to keep an eye on something like browning, so it doesn't brown too fast. So if you were to even use like butter for this, that's great, really great flavor. But you might want to have your stovetop just a little bit less than than you would with olive oil. So this is really good when it comes to the burning point for this one is perfect for this. Grapeseed oil is another one that's very similar to olive oil. Actually, the way they make it is very similar. They use grape seeds instead of olives. That's a really high burning point, so you probably want to turn it up even a little more if you use that. But grapeseed oil is really good. People like it. I think it's more, it's the fat content is more healthy. I can't speak to that as much because I'm not really like a health science person. I don't really diet. I just love to eat what I like. So, but a lot of people are using grapeseed oil for that reason. So hopefully that answered your question.
Yes, thank you.
You're very welcome. All right, so I actually turned off my pork too, and I went over and checked at it. It was starting to brown, so I'm going to show you what mine looks like. So you can see, hopefully, this is Zoom. You can see that texture on there. It's like brown. That's what you want yours to look like. So again, like it's probably not cooked all the way through. I would not just take like a bite of this right now because I want it to cook a little bit more in the stock that we're going to create. It's going to boil for a while. I got a piece of my hair in there, which is normal for me with long hair. So you just take a bite of this, just kind of put it to the side because you're going to be adding it back into the stock. So what I'm going to do now is I'm actually going to put this back into the bowl. I'm going to put this back on the stove top. We're going to reheat it up in a little bit. So I've actually turned off my stove, and then I'm going to get ready to heat this up again when I add my new things to it. So I'm going to go ahead and do that now. In your pot, likely you'll have some, some of the oil in there. You'll have some of the pork fat that's still in there. Just leave it. That is all flavor we want in our stock. So don't clean out the pot. Don't wipe it down. Just leave it in there because we're actually going to be sauteing our ginger and our garlic in that in just a little bit along with our greens too. Again, this stock is all about building flavor. So most stocks for ramen just sit and simmer for like 2 hours. We're not doing that today. We don't have time for 2 hours. So we're going to be just letting it, taking all flavor for as long as we can until we eat it. So hopefully you guys have your garlic all minced up. If you guys are using a nub of ginger today, you're going to want to go ahead and peel that and then chop it up the same way. So go ahead and start working on that if you're doing that. And you can see, how big it is. They're not teeny tiny, but they're not, huge either. For garlic, it's kind of a matter of taste, how small you want it. I love garlic. I don't mind getting a larger piece. And when we are going to be sauteing it and then simmering it for a while, it's going to shrink down a little bit. So even like my biggest piece of garlic here is not going to be super big by the time I saute it. And then it's going to be simmering in that stock for a little while. So you have that. You want to get your ginger going. So if you're going to be using a nub of ginger, you probably want about the same size as the clove of garlic. So just, that can range a little bit. Kind of depends on how much you like ginger too. So as just a reminder, it's about a 1/2 inch long or so of a piece of ginger. So like this size is good for a little piece of ginger. You don't need very much of it. If you're not using all your nub of ginger today, go ahead and save it for later. It saves really well in the refrigerator for a long time. You can add it to stir fries, you can add it to soups, you can add it to teas. It works for a lot of other things too. Just saute it with some rice, it's really good. So just keep your fresh ginger if you're using that. If you're using like the, the little squeeze tube of the pre-minced or, the mashed ginger, you're gonna wanna use probably about a teaspoon or even a 1/2 teaspoon if you aren't a huge fan of ginger. I love ginger, so I'd probably go for a whole teaspoon of that one. The one you wanna use the least amount of is the ground ginger like I'm using today. This is true when it comes to using anything fresh or anything ground. You always want to use less of the ground because it's a lot more potent, a lot more powerful. So the general rule of thumb when it comes to like herbs and things, using fresh herbs, if you're gonna, let's say, something calls for, fresh thyme, but you don't have any fresh thyme, you do have a jar of dried thyme. The general rule is to use 1/3 of what it requires. And that same principle applies for something like this too. And also for like garlic too. Someone calls for like 2 cloves of garlic. You don't want to use, the general, for like a minced garlic, a clove is generally about a teaspoon to a 1/2 teaspoon. You want to use like 1/3 teaspoon of the dried, of the garlic powder. That's the word I'm looking for. This is a lot more potent. So I'm going to use maybe a little less than a 1/2 teaspoon of this ginger today. But if you're using like the squeeze tube or like the pre-minced little jar, use a whole teaspoon of it. Unless you don't like ginger, you can use a little bit less. You can back away from that. Ginger is really good in this. It's a classic flavor, classic Asian flavor, especially in Japanese food. So you want to have a little bit of, it has a little bit of like a zip to it, a little bit of a spice, not spicy, but like a spice flavor, which you want, gives you a little zip. All right, so we're gonna start to build our stock here, but we're gonna actually shift away from this dish really quickly just to get ourselves ready for the next one. So for our Thai peanut noodles, we're gonna actually just be boiling 1 pack of noodles for that. I wanna get that boiling now, just so those are ready to go when we need them. We're also gonna need that pot to actually do our egg. But I wanna have our noodles cooked before then. So what I want you guys to do now is use the other pot, not the one that we browned the pork in, the other pot. And I want you guys to fill it up just enough where 1 egg would fit in it nice and covered. So, or if you're doing more than 1 egg too, let's say, I've had people say that they're doing this for 2 people, you do 2 eggs. You want to have just enough water so just 2 eggs would fit in there. So just imagine, you can even test to float an egg in there and make sure it would all be covered. But we're going to bring that water to a boil, not with the egg in it. Leave the egg on the outside. We want the water just to be boiling. Oh wait, I'm going backwards. That's what we do when we boil the egg. We're just gonna be boiling noodles right now, okay? We'll come back to the egg. We're just boiling noodles right now. So with that said, you just need it to fit, 1 pack of ramen. So it's actually probably a similar amount. So we're gonna now grab your smaller pot. Again, if it's not smaller, that's okay. You can use a bigger one too. I'm probably gonna put like a cup or maybe 2 cups of water in here and just bring it to a boil. We'll be right back.
Like the adage of which came first, the chicken or the egg, only this time.
It happens when I cook too, and I'm doing like multiple dishes at once. I kind of get my head all confused of what goes where. So again, I put, like just about 2 cups of water in here. I'm just gonna bring it to a boil. So put your water on high, medium high, whatever it is you use to normally boil water. What's going to happen there is when that water is boiling, you can keep an eye on it. You're going to add a pack of ramen. So from the instructions that I gave you, you're going to be using your soy flavored ramen. For me, I'm going to be using beef because my store didn't have soy flavored ramen. And similar to the ginger, I wasn't about to go to a second store to try to find the soy flavored ramen. I think ramen's been really popular during the pandemic because it's easy to make. You can keep it for a long time. So I think they've had a hard time keeping all the flavors. So I'm using beef, but again, you could use any one you want. The soy one is really good. It has a good Asian flavor. You could use shrimp if you wanted to. You could use more chicken. Whatever you have your hand on is good. The ones that I suggested in the ingredients list are just really good suggestions, but I'm using beef today, and that's okay. You can use beef too. I'm also using beef for my classic ramen, but very similarly, you could use pork, chicken, whatever you can get your hands on. But if you actually bought exactly what I said in the ingredients list, we're going to be using your soy ramen for this one. So when that water is boiling, what we're going to be doing is putting just a pack of ramen in there. Don't put the seasoning in. Put that on the side. So I'm going to open up my pack now. I'm going to pull out my seasoning packet. We're going to use this later, but we don't want it now. And then as soon as that water is boiling, I'm going to add in just my chunk of ramen. You don't have to break it up or anything. You can break it in half if you want to. I just leave it whole. And then we're gonna let that boil for about 3 minutes when your water is boiling, and then you're gonna drain it in your colander. And then you're just gonna let it sit for a little bit. We're gonna come back to that when we make our peanut sauce to go with it. But this one, we're just gonna cook these noodles like normal and drain them because our Thai peanut noodles isn't gonna be a soup. It's gonna be more like a noodle dish, like a classic Thai or Vietnamese noodle dish. So then I just want to give you guys all those instructions because everyone's, water might take, some of yours water might already be boiling, depends on how fast you are. I just want you guys to get to work on that while we get to build our stock, which is what we're going to do with the big pot next. So right now you should have water boiling in one of your pots for those noodles to go get cooked in, and your other pot should just be chilling there ready to help build our stock for our classic tonkotsu ramen. So with that said, I'm going to go over there to the pot, and we're going to start sauteing our garlic, our ginger, and we're going to get ready to add in our mushrooms at this point and our greens. So I'm going to get those ready. I'm going to use some watercress. I got some from the farmer's market. It's very good, nice little green, but you can use kale, you can use spinach, you can use baby bok choy, anything that's green and is really good to saute will be really good. You can even use collard greens if you really wanted to. Just anything is going to add some fresh green flavor to your ramen is perfect for this. I think our group that we had last week used spinach, that was perfect. So I'm just gonna put watercress because I have it. Watercress is it's a classic southern green, so I'm just gonna add that to it. And then for mushrooms, you can skip on mushrooms if you don't really like them, or if you're making vegetarian ramen, you can add extra mushrooms if you want to. It adds really good flavor though. So I don't even really like mushrooms that much, but I like them in this because I really love the flavor that it adds. You're just gonna add a handful. You know, this pack right here is an 8-ounce pack. It's got a couple cups in there. I'll probably use maybe a third to a half of this. I have those ready to go. But now what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna get that pot reheated. So I'm gonna go over there and put it, you don't want it as hot as you had it when you were browning your pork. I'm probably just gonna put it on like a medium low. You just wanna saute everything so it starts to become very aromatic. You don't want them to burn too much. They can brown a little bit, but you just don't want it to be, you know, blackening or burning on you. But a little bit of browning is okay. But if you have it too low, it won't cook. So probably about medium. You can turn to a medium low if you have gas heat like I do. Medium low is probably good for that. And then I'm gonna add just a tiny bit more oil in there too, because a lot of the oil got soaked into the pork. I'm gonna do a tiny little drip of oil. This is where if you guys have any sesame oil or peanut oil, it'd be a really good addition. Let me show you what my sesame oil looks like. My sesame oil, they're little ones like this. They're very potent, so a little bit goes a long way. You probably wouldn't want to use like a whole tablespoon of this. I'll use about a teaspoon in mine. I'm going to use mine because I think it's really good. But again, probably about a teaspoon of either oil right now is fine because that pot should have a lot of pork fat in there right now that will actually be really good for sauteing. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go over there with these things, turn it on to about medium low. I'm gonna go ahead and add my oil first because similar principle, it's just going to get the oil heated first and then add your ingredients. The browning thing isn't quite as important. We don't need the sizzle here, but I always like the sizzle. I'm gonna go over there and add my ingredients, and then I'm gonna bring the computer over there in just a minute so you can see everything I'm doing. But the order of how you're gonna add things is you wanna add your garlic first, and then you wanna add your ginger, and then get that all stirred up. Once those are all stirred up, go ahead and add a handful of your greens and a handful of your mushrooms and let those saute together for about 3 minutes or so. And then we'll come back and we'll talk about adding in the water to help start building your stock from there. Other things you can add at this point, people want to add an onion. If you guys like onions, it's good to saute. In here, you could add in even more greens if you wanted to, and then some peppers if you wanted to. You would do all of that now. So you would actually cut those beforehand and let it saute first. So I'm gonna go put a drip of the oil in. And my garlic, my ginger, and then I'm gonna add these two things and give them a stir. I'll bring my computer over there now so you can watch how I'm doing this. You don't need to add any salt or anything. So here's my water boiling for my other ramen. I'm gonna put that in here now. Don't really need to do much. You don't even need to stir it really. Just place that in and let it cook. About 3 minutes once you put your ramen in. I'm gonna add my garlic to my bigger pot. About a half teaspoon of my powdered ginger. Again, if you minced fresh ginger, that's even better. Stirring that in until it's all mixed up. Starting to brown, so I'm going to turn down my temperature a little bit to about a medium low. Add a handful of my mushrooms. Get those stirred in, then I'm gonna do a handful of greens. Greens really wilt down a lot, so you can add a really big handful of greens. If you're using like kale or spinach, you can go ahead and use like up to 2 cups or so of it. This one, the watercress doesn't wilt quite as much, so I'm just not gonna add quite that much. I add about a cup total of these leaves. Give it a good old stir. If you're cooking along with me, it's probably smelling really good in your kitchen right now. You're gonna stir that until it starts to wilt down. So once your greens are wilted down, you kind of look at mine, all you can really see the greens are wilted and it's just the mushrooms in there. We're gonna actually build the rest of our flavors now. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna add our pork back into the pot, give it a stir, and then for each serving of ramen that you're doing, add 2 cups. If you're gonna be doubling this, hopefully you've already doubled, everything we've already done so far too. But again, this is kind of like preference to what you like. It's okay if you haven't. You're gonna do 2 cups of water per serving. So I'm gonna go ahead and add my pork in there and then 2 cups of water. Keep an eye on your ramen pack that's boiling. Remember, when that's cooked all the way through, go ahead and drain it. And we're going to be using that later. Once you drain that ramen, go ahead and put that pot back on the stovetop. So we're going to actually do the eggs next. I already kind of started giving you those instructions. So we'll actually focus on that next, though, once you get your other stock going. All right, you guys, just to summarize what we have going on right now, we have our, in our classic tonkotsu ramen, we're building those flavors right now. So what we have in there, we've just sauteed our garlic, we have our ginger in there, we've got our greens, our mushrooms, our pork is back in there, and then 2 cups of water. And now what you want to be doing is you want to kind of monitor your stovetop a little bit. And then you're going to want to get it at a light simmer. So right now I turned mine up to about a medium, so we can get a nice light simmer. We want that to simmer for at least 15 minutes or so. That way our pork will get cooked through, and we're going to add those flavors. Again, all of that's going to build flavor for our homemade stock for our ramen. And then I actually just finished cooking the other ramen. It was boiled, it's all good. I have it drained. Actually, I just turned it off. It's drained now. And I'm going to put this pot back on the stove top. We're going to be doing our egg next. Just keep those noodles in your colander for a little bit. Maybe every once in a while, just rinse them out a little bit. If you don't do that, they might start to stick together since we're not using it right away. Rinse it with hot water, and that will keep those noodles nice and warm for you if you're not going to eat them right away, which we're not because we're still working on our other dishes here. So with that said, we're going to go ahead and what I was starting to talk about earlier, we're going to work on making that perfect hard-boiled egg. Because when you see the beautiful pictures of ramen, they always have that nice hard-boiled egg just cracked in half on top of it, the beautiful yolk. We're going to work on building that beautiful yolk right now. So in your pot, again, you want to have just enough water so your eggs are just covered. You don't want too much water because it will take too long to boil. And also, if you put in a raw egg into water that's boiling too hard, it might bounce around in there and you could end up with a broken egg, which you don't want. So for 1 egg, I probably only need it to be about that deep or so in my pot. That way it'll be all the way covered and it'll boil faster too. So what you want to do now is get that boiling, and then we're going to come back together and I will talk to you a little bit about the next steps, because we're going to actually have to be doing some timing here to get this egg just perfect. All right, so I have that water boiling now, and so I just have my egg out and ready. So if your egg was in your refrigerator, go ahead and get that out so it's ready when it's boiling. And then the other thing is I just turned up my ramen pot a little bit. I want it to be, again, simmering because I want that to cook. So I'll bring it over here. You can see what it looks like in there. You can see there's my pot of ramen. It's not simmering yet, so I turned up my heat a little bit. We want it to be simmering, so again, the more of a simmer you get, you'll build more flavor. Turn mine up a little more. And you also cook that pork all the way through. You don't want it to be a rolling boil like you are, trying to cook pasta or anything, you'll lose too much of your liquid in there if you do that. So that's why a nice simmer is perfect. So our egg is going. So what we need to be paying attention to with the egg, you guys, is it needs to go in when the water is boiling. When the water is boiling, we're going to gently set the egg in there. You can use like a big spoon to do that. What I'll do is I'll just rest my egg on the spoon like this. And I'll gently set it in as soon as my water is boiling. Just gently set it in. I'll put it all the way to the bottom of the pot and just release it in the bottom of the pot like that. And then as soon as you put that egg in there, you want to turn the temperature down. So right now that water is going to be boiling, so you probably have it on a medium high or a high temperature. Turn it to probably a medium low or low, just so it's just tiny, lightly bubbling. The moment you turn it down to a simmer, go ahead and you want to set a timer either on your phone or on your stove top to 7 minutes. 7 minutes is what you want. This is why this is called a 7-minute egg. So if you're actually going to look up how to make a 7-minute egg, or a 6-minute egg or a 10-minute egg, you know, there's a lot of different types of hard-boiled eggs you can make. This is going to be a little more of a soft boil, I guess, too, because it's not going to be all the way cooked through. This is what I think is perfect for ramen, is 7 minutes. That timer is really important because when my timer goes off, I'm going to actually take that egg out again. So you can use the same spoon, kind of to get it out, carefully take it out. I'm going to put it right into an ice bath. So what I'm going to do once that water is boiling, I'm going to then put it in there, turn it to a simmer. I'm going to set my 7-minute timer, then I'm going to make an ice bath. So what that means is you can just use a bowl of really cold water if you don't have any ice readily available. I know that when I was a student, I didn't always have a lot of ice, but you want to put at least, you know, maybe a handful of ice cubes in there too. And what that's going to do is when we take our egg out of the boiling water after it's been in there for 7 minutes, when we put it into our ice water, it's going to stop it cooking so it doesn't overcook. I don't really love it when my hard-boiled egg has those like dry, crumbly yolks, and this is going to help you not get that. So I have some simmering going on. I'm going to go check out what's going on over here. That's my tonkotsu ramen actually simmering. So I'm going to show you what that looks like so you can see what you're trying to achieve as well. Turn it down a little bit. See how it's got a nice little simmer there? I got about a medium low. You know, it's not a rolling boil, but it's definitely bubbling. That's what we want. That's developing a lot of flavor for us. See, and that's my egg water. It's not quite ready. I want it to be boiling when I put it in. So I'm going to give that a couple more minutes. And then while we're waiting for that to boil before we put it in, you guys are doing this on your own and cooking along with me and your water is boiling, go ahead and do what I said and put the egg in there, turn on your timer, and work on that, all right? So what we want to do now is I want you guys to get your equipment ready to make our peanut sauce. And so those noodles that we drained are sitting in your colander, we're going to be adding our peanut sauce to it, our simple peanut sauce. So our equipment for that, I think you're going to want your lime juice, your soy sauce, your peanut butter, and then, you know, you should have your soy sauce, your soy flavoring packet for that one. Again, if you're not using the soy, that's okay. I'm using the beef for this one, but this one was designated for the soy because we're going to add this to that as well. So again, just like a cereal bowl is perfect, like this. This is perfect to make our sauce. So we're going to be making our sauce right in here. If you want, if you haven't, added some water to your ramen in a little while that's sitting in the colander, go ahead and do that. My water is also boiling, so I'm going to go add my egg there and set my timer. So you guys should do the same and check on all your things while I'm doing that. All right, I set my timer, I put my egg in there. My egg, actually, this is a good question I usually get in live classes. If you put your egg in and there's a little bit still showing at the top, just add a little bit more water. Don't add too much. If you're adding, colder water to that boiling water, it will kind of mess with your timing. Just a little bit of water to get that egg covered is perfect. And I had to do that actually. So I turned mine down to a simmer. It's like on a medium low. I'm going to check on it in just a minute to make sure I do have the right temperature. Don't just set it and forget it, because sometimes, I think last week when I did a class on this, because someone went back to check on their egg after 6 minutes and they realized it wasn't even simmering, it was just sitting in water. So you want to check on it right away and make sure you have that simmer. Again, not a rolling boil, but just a light little bubble, and I'll go show you what that looks like for me too. See how it's still bubbling down there? Just a light little bubble. That's what we want. Here's our simmer on our ramen then. That's what we want. It's building flavor, cooking that ramen. It smells really good. That's what we want. So while our 7-minute timer is going off or going on, we're gonna make our peanut sauce. Have that ready to go. So with that, we're gonna add 2 tablespoons of peanut butter. You can eyeball this if you guys want to, but again, remember we have that tablespoon out to measure this. Point this down so you guys can see me measuring. I'm gonna use this spoon and just kind of make sure I have about a tablespoon, 2 tablespoons of peanut butter. Again, this is per serving. This is an easy one to do multiple of if you really want to have, you know, if you want to make for more than 1 person or make extra so you have lunch tomorrow, that's always good. This is just for 1 serving. About 2 tablespoons, that's perfect. I want to get all of that in there. I'm going to scrape that in there, make sure you get all the peanut butter. It's not all stuck to my measuring equipment. That's not as fun. Always do your peanut butter first, you guys, so then you can actually use your other liquids to help get the rest of it out. And you're going to do 1 tablespoon of each of your other ones. So 1 tablespoon of soy sauce. That's going to add nice saltiness to the dish. And you want to add some acidity to the dish with your lime juice. You could, if you're using a fresh lime, which is also great, use almost the whole lime, maybe just short of the whole lime. Squeeze in there. I like a lot of lime juice, so if you want to use the whole lime, that's perfect. A little extra acidity. Really tasty. If you want a little bit of spiciness in yours, which I do, I'm going to do a little squeeze of sriracha in there. About a half teaspoon, not tablespoon, half teaspoon or so in there. And then you're also going to want to add your flavoring packet. So again, your soy flavored flavoring packet is what you'll add into this one. Perfect. Now you can use a spoon, just kind of start smushing the peanut butter into the sauce. This one's hard to stir right away because, you know, it's peanut butter. But once it starts absorbing some of that liquid, it'll become easier. Then you want to stir it until it becomes a nice, smooth sauce. You might have some peanut butter chunks on there, and that's okay because we're actually going to be using one of the pots to reheat this. So once you add some heat to that peanut butter, it's going to break up a lot easier for your sauce. See how mine's starting to become a little more smooth already? But you can see there's like kind of peanut butter chunks. It doesn't look super appealing, but you just know it's peanut butter and soy sauce. Kind of looks like it's curdled a little bit. It sort of is, all that acidity. Try to get it as smooth as possible. A nice sauce. Super easy. That's what we're going for. All right, now that we have our sauce done, maybe you go put some more water on your ramen in the colander so it doesn't stick. Check your timer too. If your timer is off in your egg, you want to get it in your ice bath. So if you don't have your ice bath ready yet, also work on that right now. Put some water on my ramen so it's not going to stick. And now I'm going to make my ice bath, which again, you just need like, you know, a small little, you know, thing, like a bowl. And then like cereal bowl is fine, small mixing bowl is fine. Just fill it so, you know, the ice water and the ice would totally cover the egg. Fill my bowl with water. Now I'm going to add some ice cubes. Megan, do you have a question about allergies I saw pop up?
No, I was just saying, because I do have peanut allergies. It's cool for me to be able to watch this. But if there are folks who have allergies, especially peanut, nut, you know, are there alternatives to this? Are there workarounds for some of these dishes and things?
Yeah, you can use any other form of like nut butters and things that you would, I mean, you're probably more familiar with those than I am, having a peanut allergy. You could use anything like that for this one. And then also, what would be more helpful for you too is to hear the pad thai alternatives for this, because that doesn't have any peanuts. Actually, the classic pad thai doesn't really use a ton of peanut flavoring the way we use here, a lot of Americanized versions. So again, when I send the recipes to you, that kind of outlines that in there. But you would actually, instead of using any peanut butter, you could use about a tablespoon of fish sauce, a tablespoon, I gotta say this out loud. You need a tablespoon of fish sauce, a tablespoon of soy sauce, a tablespoon of lime juice, and a tablespoon of sugar. So about almost equal parts of all those things. So it's a perfect, you get your sweet, your salty, you get spicy from adding in some red pepper as well. Your sweet, salty, spicy, and savory. Very good. You don't even need any peanut for that. So, and sour from your lime. I knew there's another S in there somewhere. The 4 S's of pad thai. But you don't even need any peanut in that. And that would work really well for this dish too. So. All right, my timer is going to go off in 16 seconds. So what I'm going to do now, again, if you guys maybe already done it this part, I'm going to get ready to take my egg out because, I want to get it immediately out and then put into my ice bath. All right, so my egg's in my ice bath. If you're cooking along with me, hopefully yours is too. We're gonna leave that in there right until it's time to serve our ramen. And I'm gonna plate every dish for you so you can see how I would plate it right before eating. Again, if you're cooking this along with me, you're probably going to have, a lot of ramen to eat. So again, your salad's good for tomorrow. For mine tonight, either of the tonkotsu ramen that we're making, as well as the peanut noodles, those hold well the next day too. So if you're making this all at once, like I am, you can pick one and save it for lunch tomorrow. Me, I have someone to share it with. My husband's going to probably eat the ramen because he really loves mushrooms and I don't. So I would eat it, but I probably would have put less mushrooms. I loaded that up for him. So I'll eat the peanut noodles tonight. But either make great leftovers, and then we'll have the salad. We'll probably grill something tomorrow night if it's nice, and eat the ramen salad along with that. It's perfect for that. So now, you guys, our tonkotsu ramen's been simmering now and building that flavor for, at least 10, 15 minutes now. It's been at least 15 minutes for me, which is good. We're gonna now get ready to cook our noodles in it. So you probably have another pack, like pork, beef, to use. You can use really any one you have again. I got the seasoning packet. We might actually use this. In fact, I'm going to go test it now. I always tell people when I teach in-person cooking classes, I like people to taste test their food. So I always say, like, get, a spoon, get something, and just always taste test, and then use your own taste buds to try to help you determine what you guys want to actually cook, or what you want to actually season it with. So I'm going to go taste mine right now and see what I want. You really want to be looking for like salt level. If you think it's already salty enough, don't worry about adding any. If you think it needs a little more something, try adding maybe a half or your whole packet of your flavoring in there. So I'm going to do that now. Oof. And my flavor is really good. Again, I love, like I said, I don't love eating mushrooms. It's a weird texture thing with me, but I love the flavor. Really good flavor in that, but it needed a little more salt. So I'm going to go ahead and add about half my seasoning packet to mine. And again, you want to make sure it's still at a simmer. So just kind of control your temperature. Again, probably medium, low. Everyone's oven temp is totally different. And now that it's simmering too, I'm going to add in my block of ramen. You can break this apart if you want to. I'm just going to put it in like this, give it a little stir. I'll actually take you guys over there with me. And we're going to let it cook for about 3 minutes or so. It's super, super short. Drop it in. So you see it's going to go in there. I'm going to give it a stir. Figure out how to hold my laptop. I wish sometimes when I'm teaching Zoom classes, everyone could see what it's like on my side, where I'm like holding my computer at a weird angle and cooking at the same time. I'm gonna turn it up a little bit so that when boils. So if you're, too light of a simmer, you want it to turn up. So I'm turning it on to a medium. See, it's starting to bubble already. I want to break that apart and get that in the water. Get that in the stock that I made. Yeah, there we go. That's what we want. It's going to feel like your ramen is very full, but it's a very filling dish. While it's still a soup, it's going to be very full, much more full than you're used to with a classic, just plain pack ramen. So we added the pork, we added the mushrooms. It should be full of stuff. It's perfect. We're gonna let that simmer in there for about 3 minutes, okay? I'll come back and stir it in just a little bit to make sure all of it gets in there. But then in the meantime, we're gonna get our peanut ramen going. So we're gonna use the same pot you just used for your egg. So this pot here, we just boiled our egg in. Again, I like to reduce the number of pots and things I'm using. I'm gonna go ahead and dump out this water here, and then I'm gonna put it on about a medium low. We're just gonna heat up our peanut sauce and the noodles we drained in just so they start to get stuck together. I'm gonna go drain that now. I'm gonna stir my ramen, get those noodles broken up, and then reduce it down to a simmer. Once your noodles are, loose and broken up in your tonkotsu ramen, go ahead and just turn it down to low or simmer just so it's staying warm until it's time to eat. Again, these little ramen packets take about 3 minutes to cook those noodles. Don't take very long. So once it's simmering, go ahead and just turn it down, let it stay nice and warm until it's time to eat, which is coming up soon here. I'm gonna go ahead and take my peanut sauce here, and I'm going to take my drained noodles, I'm gonna add them to the little pot. So we'll go back over there, and you'll see exactly what I'm talking about. All right, I'm gonna turn this on to just medium low or something. We just want it warm enough. So we're gonna get these noodles to adhere to our peanut sauce. I'm gonna dump my peanut sauce in. Get all of it in there. I'm gonna get a rubber spatula so I can actually get all of my sauce, because I really want all of my sauce in this. Rubber spatula is a great tool for that. You can really clean up all of it in there, because that's what I want. Stir it up. I'm gonna add my drained ramen to the pot. And then you're just gonna stir it, and I'll show you in a minute here, until the sauce is totally coated onto the noodles. Remember, this one's not a soup, it's more like a noodle dish, very simple noodle dish. See a little sneak peek there. See, oops, that fell right in the way. So it just looks like some nice peanut noodles. Here's our ramen over here. You see how it's not super liquidy, it's a soup. You still see the stock in there, but it does look pretty full, and that's okay. That's one of the questions I get often with this one is if that's too much, or it's too much stuff and not enough water. That's perfect. We definitely added the right amount of water. That's why you don't want to boil it too much and you lose too much of your liquid, but that was perfect the way I have it there. So just a few more things. Now, right now, both of my stovetops are on low. We're just keeping them hot because we're getting everything ready to plate now and serve, because it's time to eat. So if you're cooking along with me, you're probably getting hungry because you've been smelling all of this and it smells really delicious. I'll bring my cutting board back. I'm gonna cut up some green onion. You probably saw there's some green onion on the list we needed today. Green onion is great for a nice added bit of freshness, and it adds some color to your dishes. So a lot of dishes like this, like these Thai peanut noodles and the fresh ramen, it's good to have some of these green onions in here. I'll show you 2 ways I like to cut them. First of all, we're just using the greens. You can use these whites almost as an onion substitute. They have a really good kind of garlicky flavor. We're just using the greens as a garnish today. So that's just this part here. The first thing I always do is these ends are always kind of, wonky and old and gross. We're gonna cut those right off. And I'm gonna make it nice and even on the top. See how even now I have a line here with my green onion? That's what you want. Then you're gonna take your knife and just with the garlic, do small little rocks. I'm gonna pull back with the tip down and then push forward with my knife. I'm gonna go to this side so you can see me. I'm holding the greens together far from my knife. So you aren't gonna cut your finger off there. So I'm cutting little tiny pieces of green onion that I'll use to garnish my dish with. Just like that. That's what you want it to look like. The other way to cut this, which is really fun, this is a nice chef's cut on these green onions. We're gonna do a really deep cut. So instead of having my knife perpendicular like this, I'm gonna turn it totally like this and cut a nice deep angle. So I'm gonna show you what it looks like. Super deep angle, almost parallel, but not quite, because then it wouldn't be cutting. Small little cuts. Watch your fingers the whole time on this one. Pull back and push through. Then you'll see what I've got here are these really pretty like long cuts on them. You guys can see that well on Zoom, but that looks really pretty on a dish like this. Again, this is just garnish cut. You know, doing some knife skills is always good practice. Always practice with your knife. Practice makes perfect with it. I teach knife skills classes too, which are always very fun. There's many different ways to use it for many different types of things. So, okay, we're gonna plate everything now. Everyone's favorite part is eating. So we're gonna go ahead and plate our peanut noodles first. There's one last step to the peanut noodles we have before we actually take it out of the hot pot. It's just sitting there on low. I'm gonna add a handful of peanuts and give it a stir. I'm gonna put it on a plate and then I'll let you guys see what it looks like. I'll face down here so you can see me. I'm gonna go stir this in there. Here's my plate. I'm gonna put my peanut noodles, put them right on my plate there. I added some peanuts to it. You can add some more fresh peanuts if you want. You could do a little bit of red pepper flakes on this. You could do a little more of sriracha if you wanted it. I'm just gonna go ahead and add my pretty green onions to the top here. Put some sesame seeds on it if you wanted to. And then boom, we've got a nice dish here. Ready to eat. Super easy. Again, everything might seem more complicated tonight because we're making 3 dishes at once. So keep this in mind that all this is super easy when you do it on your own. But you know, we're doing 3 at once tonight. Again, you're gonna get all these recipes so you can easily repeat them. And this is the one where I have an easy pad thai alternative where you just add some fish sauce and some sugar to it and you have a perfect pad thai sauce. Super delicious. Now we're gonna plate our other ramen. So I'm actually gonna get like a wide bowl. So if you have like a pasta bowl at home, or you can just use a regular cereal bowl again. I've got a really wide bowl like this. One like this is good. These might seem kind of large. It looks really pretty for plating, so I'm gonna use it for this. I'm gonna pour my ramen in there. Good. Looks nice and filling. You won't go hungry when you eat that. It's a lot of ramen. And now I'm getting my egg. The moment of truth with the egg and see if it looks really pretty or not. I'm gonna go ahead and put my more green onions on this so it's nice and fresh. Take my egg out. Peeling it. There's really no great strategy in peeling an egg like this. They always, oh, I'm having a hard time already. They always say, you know, the older the egg, the better. So if you get like farm fresh eggs, like I usually get, they don't work very well to peel. They're harder to peel. So mine's kind of breaking apart a little bit. So mine will be a little bit uglier on the outside than others, but it should be really pretty on the inside. I can already feel it feels pretty good. Go ahead and peel your egg. My egg is really breaking apart. This better be worth it on the inside for how ugly it is on the outside. When we cut into it, remember, we're gonna wanna have that nice kind of jammy yolk in the middle. That's what we're going for. Again, if yours isn't perfect, remember, practice makes perfect with these eggs too. You gotta practice hard boiling eggs. I hard boil eggs all the time and I still mess them up sometimes. So if yours isn't perfect tonight, don't worry about it. Get those shells all out of the way. I'm gonna cut my egg right in the middle. Oh, it looks perfect, good. Whoops. So the whites are all cooked You can see how you get that nice, like jammy liquid center. So it's nice and shiny and shimmery and not like dry and crunchy. That's what you want. The whites are all the way cooked and my yolk is just, you know, it's just cooked on the very outside of it, but the inside is nice and liquidy. I'm just gonna plate that nicely right here in my ramen in the corner. And then, you know, that adds a nice pretty picture if you're someone like me and likes to take pictures of your food. You have your nice bowl of classic tonkotsu ramen right there. So that's one dish and two dishes. And then last but not least, we can't forget our salad. Let's go taste this at first. We've got our ramen salad that we worked on. I'm gonna get a spoon out and just give it a good stir. Again, like I said on this one, I probably won't eat this one tonight. It's gonna work better tomorrow once it really has the chance for that dressing to soak into those noodles. But if you're cooking along with me right now, you can definitely try it so you can get an essence for the flavor. I'm gonna try just a big piece of this ramen here. It used to be crunchy, but it's starting to soften up a little bit. You'll see how it's gonna be tomorrow. Good. Super fresh, lightly tangy, a little sweet from that sugar. Really good salad. Awesome, you guys. So these are our 3 dishes. And I'm going to be sending Megan all the recipes so you guys can recreate them on your own. I'll have some variations. I'll be sure to include things you can add to the salad if you want to get more creative with the salad. Again, this is a really good potluck dish, really good dish for lunches, especially as a student on the go, because it's good cold. I mean, you can just like put this in your Tupperware and then eat it in between classes. This is really good for that. These are good to eat cold too, in fact, but these will save really well as well. You have your peanut noodles and then our tonkotsu ramen. So hopefully you guys thought those were all pretty simple. I really hope you guys give them a try. And then again, and Megan has my contact information. You can email me at margie@margiefoodie.com or margie@serenityknoll.com. And then also you can, if you guys ever make these dishes, please let me know. Either email me how it went, email me questions if you guys ever have. You can also follow me on Instagram at margiefoodie and just DM me if you want to ask a question or tag me if you make food. My favorite thing is having people tag me in the food they make. It makes my day. And I'm hoping you guys really enjoyed this.
Thank y'all so much for hanging out. If you do have questions, feel free to drop those in the chat. Margie is here to answer. Those dishes all look beautiful. Margie, thank you so much for spending some time with us this lovely first day of fall evening, making some lovely food. We do have some events coming up this week in the Center for Student Engagement. We are hosting a speaker, Suni Patterson, on Thursday. That's going to be a virtual event. You can find all of that information on our social media at UTKCSE or at UTKCEB for our campus entertainment board, since that's one of their events. Lots of things coming up, especially in October, that we're really excited to announce soon. Our reframed version of Homecoming is coming soon, and we're working very hard to bring y'all some really great programs for that. But once again, thank you so much, Margie, for hanging out with us this evening. Greatly appreciate it, and lovely dishes.
Thank you. Thank you guys so much. Thanks, Dylan. Thanks for joining in. See you guys.
Bye.